Good afternoon, Prof. Dylan. For my presentation, I'll be discussing how Israel's foreign policy can be understood through the lens of realism, which is one of the key theories of international relations. This topic was chosen as the media headlines are currently dominated by the Israel-Hamas war, and I believe that realism can offer a good explanation of Israelis' decisions on their foreign affairs. In this presentation, I'll first cover a few key events of Israel's foreign affairs, followed by an explanation of Israel's foreign policy with the core aspects of realism, and rounding it off by stating some limitations of the realist explanation. Firstly, I'd like to give a short overview of the topic. One of the most contentious IR topics today is the legitimacy of the State of Israel, which has sparked multiple conflicts throughout the 20th century to date. The latest war is just another major event in the wider Arab-Israeli conflict, and Israel's actions in the IR arena have far-reaching impacts around the world. In particular, ever since its formation, Israel has engaged in multiple conflicts that threaten its survival, and no modern state today faces such opposition to its statehood. To better understand Israel's approach, it will be useful to go through a few brief timelines of key events that shaped Israel's foreign policies. Before the founding of the State of Israel, there was an ongoing civil war between Jewish and Arab communities after the UN General Assembly adopted a recommendation for a partition plan for Palestine. Israel subsequently declared its independence after the termination of the British Mandate, which led a military coalition of Arab nations to launch a joint invasion to prevent the establishment of the Jewish state. Israel emerged as the victor and secured its statehood, which led to the expulsion of half of the Arab population in Palestine from their homes. This led to a period of heightened tensions between the Arab nations and Israel, which ultimately led to the Six-Day War, which Israel decisively won and captured large areas of territories from multiple adversaries. This defeat caused the Arab states to issue the Khartoum Resolution, which famously included the three no's with regards to Israel. They are no peace, no negotiation, and no recognition. The Yom Kippur War subsequently broke out within the Arab states and Israel, and the aftermath of the war led the Israelis to realize that their military dominance in the region was no longer certain. This occurrence eventually set the stage for future peace talks. Israel then started on the road to negotiate a lasting peace with its neighbors that included its right to exist, which led to the signing of accords and treaties as listed in the slide. This allowed Israel to seek further normalization of ties with other Arab nations to attain recognition of its existence and seek peaceful coexistence. However, the question of Palestinian sovereignty and statehood remains unsolved, and a powder keg of national security concerns for Israel. Despite multiple dialogues and even the signature of the Oslo Accords, which granted the PLO recognition and representative status, armed resistance and conflicts still occurred due to general resistance to Israeli rule in what is considered occupied Palestinian land. These events include the Intifadas, Lebanon War, and the current Israel-Hamas war, which is still ongoing. These key events hence give a background to Israel's current geopolitical situation. Moving on, I will now focus on using realism to explain Israel's foreign policy approach. Just to recap, the core aspects of realism are as such. International politics are inherently self-analytical, and security cannot be taken for granted. States are inherently selfish and will only care about its self-interest, and the three essentials of realism. A state's primary goal is to survive. Sovereign states are the main actors in international relations, and a state cannot trust others for their protection and must secure its security. So this is the three essentials: survival, statism, and self-help. We can see these aspects relevant to Israel's geopolitical context. First, the survival of the state is of primary importance to Israel due to the grave consequences of any potential destruction of the Jewish state. With the foundation of the Jewish state based on protecting the Jewish people from persecution and violence, any loss of statehood might result in widespread killings and reprisals against the Jewish people. We have seen multiple states and non-state actors publicly calling for the eradication and destruction of the Israeli state in their charters. Furthermore, Israel is surrounded by historically hostile neighbors, with their population having strong enmity towards Israel. One key example is Iran, which is the chief state sponsor of Hezbollah and Hamas, which are engaging in combat with Israeli forces, and their leaders constantly speaking of wiping Israel off the map. Next, Statism is highly relevant in Israel's foreign policy, as primary actors in Middle Eastern affairs are still states. Key decisions such as peace or war are still being decided by the region states, and analysts often try to predict how certain states might respond to certain events, such as retaliatory strikes or bilateral agreements. We also see states pursuing policies based on their self-interest. For example, Saudi Arabia, who were historically enemies with Israel, had a shift in their approach due to the priorities shifting to curb Iran's influence in the region. This led to Israel seeking better relations with Saudi Arabia. Lastly, self-help is also crucial for Israel due to the volatile nature of international relations. With Israel facing increasing condemnation for its bombing and campaigns, we have seen traditional Israeli allies speaking up against Israeli actions more frequently. Even the US, who is Israel's staunch ally, can be subject to increasing domestic pressure to withdraw support for Israel. Furthermore, Israel does not have any formal defense treaties with any countries, which goes to show that it cannot rely on any state or international institution to guarantee its survival. With this context, we can then see how the Israeli foreign approach can be realist in nature. First, we can examine Israel's current government, which is led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party and its coalition government of National Camp Allied parties. Likud's ideology has emphasized national security policy based on a strong military force to appeal to voters. Likud is also known to take a hardline stance towards Iran and its proxies, with military operations and direct strikes conducted on them. With this approach from Israel's governing party, we can see the realist aspect of security and survival being prevalent in Israel's foreign policy. Israel is known to undergo preemptive strikes such as launching airstrikes first before the Six-Day War and the bombing of Iraq's Osirak nuclear reactor, which Israel deemed as national security threats despite not being attacked prior. In addition, Israel has a policy of nuclear ambiguity, which provides an ultimate guarantor of Israeli security. Next, we can also see a balance of power approach from Israel to counteract its adversaries, with Israel taking both internal and external balancing methods to bolster its position. Externally, we see Israel constantly seeking assistance from other countries, such as the US for military supplies, and in the modern context, Israel has entered into an unofficial security coalition with Sunni Arab states like Saudi Arabia and Jordan, who also want to contain Iran's ambitions in the region. The Abraham Accords were a step towards normalizing relations with more Sunni Arab states and increasing interstate cooperation. Israel has also internally balanced by upgrading its military hardware, also maintaining technological superiority over its neighbors. Israel has purchased the latest Gen F-35 fighters and also increased their stockpile of Iron Dome missile defense systems to ensure its enemies do not have an edge over its defenses. Despite these aspects of realism being prevalent, there are limitations to realism's explanation of Israel's foreign policy. One limitation is that realism neglects ideological and religious factors involved, such as Zionism and impact of religious belief like Islam on states and their population. Such factors play a crucial role in influencing opinions and perspectives on dealing with issues in the region. Another limitation is the emphasis on statism, which might overlook the impacts of non-state actors in the region, such as Hamas and Hezbollah, who are political organizations operating autonomously and not traditional state actors. These non-state actors are key parties to the ongoing conflict, which cannot be downplayed. The final limitation is that realism might not adequately account for Israeli domestic politics, which can shape its foreign policy approach. Public opinion over certain issues might alter how elected Israeli leaders may chart their foreign policy approach. In conclusion, realism provides a simple explanation on Israel's foreign policy, especially on defense and national security. From its focus on survival and security to preemptive strikes and strategic alliances, many of Israel's actions fit well within realist theory. However, it is important to remember that realism has its limitations in painting the complete picture of Israel's foreign policy. Other factors like domestic politics, ideology, and non-state actors also play a part in how Israel approaches its foreign policy. Thank you.